The Living Faith Means Living Justly programme is a series of talks based on scriptures and Catholic social teaching. And it aims to provide Catholics who wish to engage in work for justice and peace and care for creation with a solid understanding of what our faith teaches as a starting point for a Christian response to justice issues in the world today. The programme was developed as a foundational training for individuals and parishes who wish to set up or participate in faith and justice groups. The overall aim of the programme is to promote just living, either as individuals or as Christian communities. The presentations will be delivered by Bishop Patrick Harrington SMA and by myself, Mr. Jerry Ford, Justice Officer at the SMA Justice Office. Our faith calls us to live in a particular way, to live justly. And this means being faithful to a right relationship with God, with our fellow human beings, and with creation itself. Our task as Christians is to orientate ourselves constantly to the vision we see in the Bible, and thus make the kingdom of God present wherever we live and work.
The Church shares in all of mankind's joys and hopes, anxieties and sadness. Vatican II stated this clearly in Gaudium et Spes. She, the Church, we, in other words, we stand with every man and woman of every place and time. And all the social teaching of the Church makes the teachings of the Bible present in this complex world of social relations. In addition, the Church has learned from centuries of experience. And she interprets this experience by reading the signs of the times, and thus provides direction and hopefully guidance for the faithful and for all people of goodwill in a world that is in constant change. And while the Church avails of all contributions from all branches of knowledge, the social teaching is aimed at guiding people's behavior. And her teaching is to be found at the crossroads where Christian life and conscience come together and come into contact in the real world.
As we look around us at this real world, we can see that the right relationships which should exist between God, human beings and creation are often sadly lacking. Hunger, war, poverty. These force people from their homes, often causing hardship, injury, and even death. Many people lack the basics which we take for granted: food, water, medicines, shelter. There are big inequalities as a result of greed, corruption, and exploitation. There is a huge imbalance between the poor and the rich. The planet itself is under serious threat. And the Church sees these signs and situations, and through its social teaching announces the response that we as Christians are called on to make.
You may ask, where can we find this social teaching of the Church? Well, there are many documents and publications. The document, for example, of Second Vatican Council, the various encyclicals and instructions issued by the popes. And while it is much older in origin, the social teaching really began to be put into a system in the late 19th century with the famous document Rerum Novarum by Leo XIII. And that document dealt with workers' rights, with the value of people, the individual person. It dealt with systems and with structures. And successive popes since then have made their contribution. There is a book published, the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church, published in 2004, which systematically presents the foundations of Catholic social teaching, and it is a most useful guide.
The list before you contains 15 church documents. In these, the signs of the times are interpreted in the light of faith. They are concerned with such issues as world peace, proper rights and responsibilities between individuals, groups and states, the global economic balance. They're concerned that richer countries would help poorer ones. They're about freedom, social concerns and Christian action. They're about development and peace. They concern urban poverty, the condemnation of unfettered capitalism, combating injustice. They advocate for fair trade. And they speak about the relationship between truth and charity. The latest one, Laudato Si', is about concern and care for the earth, our common home. So all of these state the church views. However, we cannot go into all of them in detail here. We will, however, draw out the guiding principles contained in them. 6 key guiding principles of Catholic social teaching give us the vision and tools to see a situation for what it is, to judge the situation. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it fair? Or is it just? And to act by making a Christian response to the situation. Thus, these key principles enable us to rectify and to maintain that right relationship between God, our fellow human beings, and the world in which we live. And incidentally, the principles we are about to look at are the very same principles enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
So principle 1, human dignity. This is the first of the principles we would like you to consider. Human dignity, the unity of the human family, which flows from that shared dignity. Catholic social teaching believes and teaches that human beings, created in the image and likeness of God, have, by their very existence, an inherent value and worth.
Each person has an inalienable, transcendent, God-given dignity. And this dignity is the foundation of Catholic social teaching and the starting point in Catholic thinking about human rights. In Pacem in Terris, the Church also teaches that human dignity does not lessen due to age, disability, income, status, gender, or race.
And by virtue of this dignity, each member of the human family is equal in dignity, equal in rights. We are all children of the one God. We are sisters and brothers to each other. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female. For you are all one in Christ Jesus, St. Paul writes the letter to the Galatians.
So for us as Christians, the measure of every action is whether it threatens or enhances the life and dignity of the human person. Flowing from our God-given dignity is the right to life, the right to a worthy standard of living, the right to education, the right to worship God according to one's conscience, rights pertaining to cultural and moral values, the right to choose one's state in life, economic rights, political rights, and there are many other. In fact, there are 30 articles listed in the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
So having rights also implies responsibilities. Responsibilities to respect and protect the rights of others. They too must enjoy the same rights as oneself.
The life and dignity of every person must be respected and protected at every stage and in every condition. The right to life is the first and most fundamental principle of human rights that leads Catholics to actively work for a world of greater respect for human life and a greater commitment to justice and peace. And this is from Caritas in Veritate.
So that's principle 1, human dignity. Principle 2, the common good. What does it mean? The common good means the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. God made us all for a reason, and He gave all of us gifts and potential. And He calls us to know, love, and serve Him. So we have a right and a duty to achieve this potential and to develop our gifts.
And the doctrine of the common good also emphasizes that we are connected to other people. Each social group must take account of the rights and aspirations of other groups and of the well-being of the whole human family. The rights and duties of individuals and groups must be harmonized under the common good.
Each individual also has a duty to share in promoting the welfare of the community. And each individual has a right to benefit from that welfare. This applies at every level, at the local level, the national level, and international level. The public authorities exist mainly to promote the common good and to ensure that no section of the population is excluded. Benedict XVI says, "To desire the common good and strive towards it is a requirement of justice and charity." It is clear, therefore, that as individuals, peoples, and nations, we have no right to squander resources which are in need elsewhere when other people are in great need. Even rights to property are subordinate to the rights of all to subsistence. And society has a duty to give preferential care to those who are disadvantaged, the widows, the orphans, and the poor. In other words, expressing the unity of the entire human family. So that's principle 2. We move on to principle 3, participation. People again have the right and the duty to participate in decisions that directly affect them. They are to actively shape their own destiny rather than to just accept blindly the decisions of others.
In the Catholic tradition, responsible citizenship is a virtue, and participation in political and social life is a moral obligation that is rooted in our baptismal commitment to follow Jesus Christ and to bear Christian witness in all that we do. So the right to participate belongs not only to individuals, but also to groups and communities. We have a duty to participate for the common good, to participate so that human dignity can be achieved.
It is necessary that all participate, each according to his or her position and role. To participate in promoting the common good, because this obligation is inherent in the dignity of the human person. And as far as possible, citizens should take an active part in public life.
And I think most of us are familiar with the statement from Edmund Burke saying that all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. And this implies that all that is necessary for the triumph of justice is that good men and women do something good and constructive.
So we've had principle 1, human dignity, principle 2, the common good, principle 3, participation. Now we move on to principle 4.
Solidarity. And solidarity recognizes the fundamental bond of unity with our fellow human beings and our resulting interdependence. All are responsible for all.
Difficult enough perhaps to define solidarity, but let's make an effort. And we're helped here by one of the encyclicals. Solidarity is the firm and persevering determination to commit oneself to the common good, to the good of all and the human rights of all, because we are all really responsible for all. Firm, persevering determination to commit oneself to the common good. In particular, spelling this out, it means the rich have responsibilities towards the poor, and national and international structures must reflect this.
And this principle answers the question, am I my brother's keeper? And the answer is yes, I am. And yes, you are. And this implies that as Christians, we must work for change so that everyone will be able to reach their potential. And this is why, for example, missionaries not only preach the gospel, but they also dig wells, build clinics and schools in order to help people realize their God-given potential. And this principle also teaches us that people in far-off lands and non-nationals who live among us are not enemies or intruders. The poor are not burdens. All are brothers and sisters, blessed with life and dignity, which we are called on to respect and protect. In Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis states, "The word solidarity is a little worn and at times poorly understood, but it refers to something more than a few sporadic acts of generosity. It presumes the creation of a new mindset which thinks in terms of community and the priority of the life of all over the appropriation of goods by a few." So here Pope Francis is telling us that solidarity puts people first.
Principle 5, subsidiarity. What do we mean by subsidiarity? Subsidiarity means all power and decision-making in society should be at the most local level that is compatible with the common good. In other words, the principle of subsidiarity teaches that larger entities should not assume the roles and functions of smaller entities unless it is absolutely necessary. This principle of subsidiarity places responsibility as close as possible to the grassroots. The people or groups that are most directly affected by a decision or policy should have a good say in any key decision-making that takes place. An intervention from above is only to support in cases of need and to coordinate with the rest of society with a view to achieving the common good.
Flowing from and implicit in the 5 principles we have already looked at is another one. And it is one that is becoming more important and even urgent in the world today. In recent times, we have seen the devastation caused by typhoons, tornadoes, and floods. And these have focused our attention on the issue of climate change and the need to care for creation.
So now we look at the principle involved, principle 6, care for creation. As Christians, we are called to care for God's creation. It is a requirement of our faith. It's not something, an optional extra. We are stewards of God's creation, and nature must not be reduced to being an instrument for manipulation or exploitation. We are stewards. We are people who care, nurture, and respect creation.
And God created the world in all its richness, diversity, and order. Each creature possesses its own particular goodness and perfection. All are interdependent. There is solidarity among all creatures.
And as care of creation involves the entire planet, collaboration on an international level is required to control activities that have a negative effect on the environment and to protect the common good. Collaboration at all levels of society is required to control damaging activities and negative effects.
Programs of economic development must take into account the integrity and cycles of nature, because natural resources are limited and some are not renewable. The need for economic development must be balanced with those of environmental protection.
Care for creation involves actively working for the integral development of the poorest parts of our world, the universal destination of human goods. The option for the poor means ensuring that proposed solutions to environmental problems do not end up in consigning millions of people to permanent poverty, while enriching even further privileged individuals and nations.
A change in lifestyle and mentality is also required. To build a just society will mean important changes to limit the waste of environmental and human resources, thus enabling every individual and all people of the earth to have a sufficient share of these resources.
And to accompany this change of lifestyle and mentality, there is a strong element of spirituality, a spiritual response. Our orientation towards the creation and towards the world itself should be one of awe, respect, and gratitude. The world, as we look at it in all its beauty, will lead people back to the mystery of God and to an understanding of His creative action.
In caring for creation, the real motivation must be the quest for authentic worldwide solidarity, inspired by the values of charity, justice, and the common good. And our responsibility for caring for creation also extends to future generations. This generation has responsibility for passing on a world that is fit for future generations to live in. And this responsibility also concerns individual states and the international community.
So, by way of conclusion, the Church continues to teach and continues to update her social doctrine. These principles which we have presented to you, 6 in number, they are not simply for theoretical discussion. They are motivated by concern, pastoral concern. A clear example of this concern expressed by Pope Francis in Laudato Si on the care of our common home. A phrase such as, "The earth, our home, is beginning to look like an immense pile of filth," he states. That certainly challenges us to wake up to the fact that our world is in real danger. All the social doctrine of the Church, which we have touched upon, it serves as a guide to form attitudes and to inspire individuals and groups to address appropriately the social issues of our day, of our time. Thus, people can be enabled to live more fully the great commandment to love God and to love one's neighbor and to look to the future with a greater trust and with hope.